If you're just getting started in a consulting business, you might be wondering, where do I spend money? Where do I save? Where do I, what do I need to do to really get this thing off the ground? There's going to be a lot of people targeting you, wanting you to buy programs, wanting you to do this, wanting you to do that. Sign up for this email list, build your email list, get on this social media, do all these things, and you might be wondering, well, how do I choose? I can't do it all. How do I choose? And I know that a lot of people don't give you the type of transparency when you're listening to gurus and you're listening to these things. They don't give you the transparency of, what are they spending? They just say, I made 6 figures. I did this. I did that. I made 8 figures in, 5 years, whatever it is. And what I want to do today is actually break down what I spent in the first 2 years of my business, 2017 and 2018, as I was getting it off the ground. I bootstrapped and I did a lot of stuff myself. You can decide if that's the right path for you. I'm not saying that I took the right path, but I kind of want to go and look down, because now I'm here 5 years into my business and I am running a thriving business. Okay, so something I was doing along the way did set me up for success. And so I'm going to dissect actually the first 2 years of my financials in my business. And this will also give you a sense for, maybe where you might want to hold off on spending money, and maybe you might wait until a certain level before you go and invest in a certain thing, So I want to just kind of break it down for you guys as much as we possibly can and give you real numbers. So I pulled this from my QuickBooks. This is a little embarrassing, and I'm kind of, when I look at my financials, I'm like, oh, that's so cute, especially the first year. So I will show you guys like what we did in the first 2 years of this business, and I will break it down for you. Okay, so if that sounds interesting, stay tuned. And if you aren't already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe, and also click the little notification button so you can get notified whenever we post new videos. Okay, everybody, so this is my profit and loss percentage of total income report. So this comes directly out of QuickBooks Online, and I wanted to share this with you today as we dissect 2017 and 2018 financials. So if you remember from the last video, or one of the last videos that we had, I just reached my 5-year anniversary in the business. So I actually started in 2017. And just to give you a little bit of context, I started the business, meaning I formed the LLC in May of 2017, May 17th, 2017. And then, but I didn't actually get my first client until August and then September. Were kind of the two. And then September, I got a client that actually was paying me more money. So just to let you know, sometimes you start a business and it takes a little while to actually try to sell the services. And that was certainly one of my weaknesses. So just full transparency, it does take a little bit of time, and we're going to see it in the financials. So I want to show you what's up. And also with in 2017, I had a full-time job, or almost full-time. It was about 32 hours a week. And so I was getting paid by that job, but it was not running through the business because I was a W-2 employee for that business. Okay, so let's just dive in. You'll see that I have my financials kind of separated. We've got accounts and sub-accounts. And what we've got here is 2017. This is the percentage of income. And then 2018 is over here. We're going to first focus on 2017. But you can see there's a pretty dramatic difference between year 1 and year 2. So as I said, year 1, I was just doing whatever I could. I was trying to find business as best as I can. I actually got hooked up with an extremely great lead. So for any accountants out there, if you're starting a business, go and talk to your banker and tell them that you're starting a bookkeeping business, or you're starting a tax accounting business, whatever it is. Because my very first kind of quality lead that ended up producing revenue well into the next couple years was actually given to me by my banker. So this $8,150 represents a few bookkeeping clients that I had. And this is also where I learned that I didn't want to be a bookkeeper. And this is also where I learned that I was severely undercharging for my services. So it's definitely something when you first get started that you learn pretty quickly. Sometimes people don't learn it and then they might go out of business over time because they never raise their prices. So this kind of was a really good indicator for me, but I was ecstatic to have made $8,550 in my first year. I remember feeling really proud about it. But now I'm just like, oh, that's so cute. That's really cute that I made $8,550. Um, and I think it's just kind of a testament to, like, if you want to grow, you can definitely grow. Accounting software is one of the big expenses in my business. When I was when I was doing the bookkeeping for clients, I would actually put their accounts on my internal um, wholesale account for QuickBooks Online. One thing I learned very quickly too is that I wasn't charging the client for those services the way that I should have been. I was charging them a little bit, but not quite enough. And so I was actually losing a little bit of money every time I was getting charged on those services. So again, another learning lesson. So my total gross profit, because I put all of these kind of direct costs up here, total gross profit was $7,896. So total cost of goods sold, less than 8%, not bad. But for a service-based business, you shouldn't have tons of cost of goods sold. I put accounting software and other direct costs, basically anything that I'm going to be billing directly back to the client, I put it up there. So at this point in time, I was taxed as a sole proprietor, LLC taxed as a sole proprietor. So I actually had zero payroll expense because I hadn't gotten set up with a payroll provider. I didn't have any employees. I was the only one doing the work. So zero payroll expense. And I really didn't hire anybody else to do anything. You can see that right here. I was just bootstrapping the crap out of things. Just to be perfectly honest, that's what I was doing. So I had a couple service charge fees. I can't remember exactly what those were when I first started, but this is really where I spent time and money, was in my professional development, business development, sales and marketing, and websites. So my professional development was really something that was important to me, and that was to keep my CPE and CPA license current. I actually ended up paying almost more money in my first year of business than I had in any other year because I didn't know where to get lower cost CPE. So I spent a lot of money. I spent almost, pretty much all of this was on CPE, and that's my continuing education that I have to do for my CPA license. When I was working at the accounting firm, they did tons of training where I got what I needed, but now owning my own business, I have to keep that current myself. And then I did join a kind of local networking group. So that was this business development. It was a group called Business Among Moms, and I went to some of their meetings, and I had a monthly fee. So that's what this was. It ended up not being my target audience, and that was a learning lesson too. I would show up there, and most of the people who were also there were newer entrepreneurs, and they weren't at a place where they were even really wanting to pay a bookkeeper to do much. So they certainly weren't ready for CFO services. But honestly, at the same time, I really wasn't ready professionally to be selling them either. I was able to deliver them. I just didn't know how to talk about them. So I couldn't sell it because I didn't know how to talk about it. So that was something that I learned in this first year and into the second year. So website, I bootstrapped my own website, and so I got a domain name and just had, basic website. That one is now gone, thankfully. But you could definitely tell it was bootstrapped. Okay, and then I did just have professional liability insurance at a very basic level to get started because I knew that was important to manage risk. And then legal, also just really minimal, and then licenses and permits to be able to operate, things like that. So all these were I guess would be called compliance costs. These are kind of more discretionary marketing and development, but when you get into like business licenses and fees and taxes, that's compliance, and that's going to be a part of getting your business off the ground. I did have just some basic office expenses. I already had a laptop that I was using, and so I didn't have to spend any money on much. And I was still kind of just working at my dining room table for the most part, so I didn't have an office space or any office equipment really. I did dabble in some co-working spaces, so this was a little bit of co-working, and then I had my internet and cell phone reimbursed by the business based on my home usage. And just some basic stuff, office supplies, little bit of gifts here and there, and no travel because really I wasn't doing anything. The I first started just looking at my local market and trying to see who I could talk to locally. And I think that was actually a really great strategy. I have since, now we serve clients all over the country, and we've met some of those clients even from traveling and doing things. But the staying local at first was a really good cost-effective way to try to find work. So I think that was probably wise in the long run. So overall, my profit percentage was 57.31%, which I would, always love to have a 50+ percentage profit margin, but, really netted less than $5,000 at the end of the day. So most of that money just stayed rolled into the business and went for reinvesting into the next year. So now we can talk about 2018. You might be going like, holy moly, because I know when I look at it, I'm like, wow, how did I do that? To go from, a 4-figure business to a 6-figure business in a year. Well, I can tell you what happened is I went full-time. So at the beginning of 2018, I went full-time in my business, and I negotiated with my current employer to stay on, but to stay on as a contractor. And so I had a nice retainer that happened there. And this is the benefit of having recurring services over and over and over again. The client that I attained in 2017 stayed with me throughout all of 2018 and into 2019, and I think even a little bit of 2020. So the acquisition of the client happened in 2017, but I was reaping the benefits and doing the work long into the future. So that, I had a full year of revenue coming in 2018, where they didn't start paying me until September of 2017. So it gave me a couple times, and I also was learning that I was undercharging. So I had, a couple clients at this point in time, and also realizing that my initially quoted prices were not high enough based on the work that I was doing and what I needed to take home at the end of the day. And so I had to raise my prices. And so those were some uncomfortable conversations, but I always was thinking about, well, how can I provide more value to this client? And I also didn't want to become resentful of the client by having too low, or my fees being too low. So a lot of these things, so managed accounting services is what I called like bookkeeping. So I was able to get a couple more bookkeeping clients as well. Again, locally, really trying to work that local. And then I started to get CFO clients. And some of this happened because I was on a podcast that was more targeting my ideal client. And from that podcast, I got lots of leads to potentially work with some of those people. And I did actually work with some of those people. So that's what helped me start to actually like hone in these CFO services and also the pricing that went along with them. Just under $130,000 was taken in 2018. I did have much higher accounting software costs because now I had a full year, again, remember a full year of expenses, and also more clients. And then I also started to get a little bit of help on the accounting side. So this is where labor really starts to come in, because you really can't grow a business without getting some help along the way. You can to a certain degree, but you're either going to burn yourself out, or you're going to be charging super, super high prices per hour, or your deliverables will be really highly priced. So when you're in a service-based business, you typically will start to have some labor costs pretty quickly. And this was honestly one of my best decisions in the business, to try to start having employees or start to have contractors quickly. This was actually a contractor that was turned into an employee. So this is actually kind of the same person during the year. We negotiated an employment agreement after kind of doing a trial run. So with this, getting some help really helped me determine what did I need to be doing and what did somebody else need to be doing, because I didn't need to be doing it all, and I needed to focus my time on what was those high value things that I could be doing. How could I sell more CFO services if I can hire a bookkeeper to do something for like, $25 to $50 an hour, depending on their skill level. It made more sense for them to be doing that work, and then me doing that work where I could go out and potentially sell CFO services and actually provide CFO services that were at a much higher profit margin. So that was huge for me, because I felt like that was a really important kind of shift. And then this was also where I just started to get a little bit more a little bit more complicated because I had more moving parts and I needed a little bit more help. And I was still trying to sort of do all the things. Like I was trying to do a blog, and I was trying to do social media, and I was trying to do, ebooks, and I was trying to do sort of these things that I had heard other people doing. I felt I needed to also do them as well. So I hired a VA to help me sort of manage some of these things. And then I also hired a blog writer to write blogs for me. And although she did a great job, and, there was nothing wrong with that work, it started to get to be like, this is not necessarily moving the needle on the revenue side for me to continue to pay this out. I mean, that was 5% of my total income went to contract labor. And looking back now, I just kind of wonder if that was really, if it was necessary. Was I just trying to do stuff that was just because I felt like I needed to, where really, if I had stepped back and I was asking myself the question, is this going to directly generate more revenue? The answer probably would have been no in most of those situations. So, I don't regret any of these expenses, but I do just kind of see and look at them like just learning lessons. So a couple other little expenses here, bank service charge fees, I think like buying new checks, things like that, credit card fees, interest expense. Some of these things do come into play. I think I missed a credit card payment. Don't get all of your credit card payments, get them on automatic because you don't want those silly little interest expenses. And this is really where I started to amp up more learning as a business owner. And I call this marketing and development. So I have business development, but then sales and marketing, and then my website, and then professional development. So you can see a pretty darn big jump, almost tenfold, pretty much tenfold of expenses in my personal and professional development. And what ended up being was a lot of coaching, CPE, which is continuing education again. So I hired a business coach. I also paid for a business retreat it was kind of a conference. I would say it was more of a conference. And I also, let's see, I'm looking at the detail here. I spent some money on things to just kind of try to help me shortcut the process a little bit. So I hired Nikki Roush, she's the sales maven. She helped me with some of my intake process and my sales process in my business. And then CPE, just for continuing education and whatnot. So spent a lot of money in that area. But honestly, all of that, I'm looking at it, I'm like, every single thing that I spent money on, I think for the most part was worthwhile. Except for maybe one conference that I paid for and then never went to. Don't do that. So that was not necessarily a great investment, but everything else absolutely was in my learning overall. Insurance has gone up in this year, mostly because I didn't need insurance until I started serving clients over here. And then this was a full year of insurance in 2018. Really not a lot, just licenses and permits, not too much over here. Charitable gifts, just a little bit. Rent. So I started playing around. This is because if you remember, I got out of my full-time job and I was working more from home on my own now. So I was really playing around with starting to understand more like where could I go to work and maybe could I find potential clients in that place. So I tried out a couple different co-working spaces. Ultimately realized that it was better for me to just try to work from home, but I did spend more money on rent in that year. Cell phone and internet charges, and then just general office expenses. Unfortunately, I had to buy a printer and a computer at this point in time since I was all out on my own. So those were maybe some unanticipated expenses that I ended up going for. And then my software costs really start to creep because now I am working fully from home and I need some services to help me as I'm growing my business. And I mean, we're all going to have software expenses. We can't do business online without having software. So a couple things I spent money on: Calendly, which is my calendaring system, Canva for work, Dubsado, and I actually paid somebody to help me set up Dubsado for onboarding new clients, Dropbox, and then I ended up doing some of those like apps where you buy them at a super discount and then never use them. I did that. Yep, I did that. And then a couple email marketing. I was trying to figure out email marketing and I was using something called Drip for a while.
And then here's something called Wondershare. I think that was a video editing software. I don't know what kind of video editing I was doing there. Not much, I can tell you that. So I did travel for that conference, the one conference I did go to in 2018. Honestly, one of the best conferences. It was BizChicks. BizChicks Live was the name of the conference. It's not happening anymore. I wish it was, but it was super helpful to me in this phase of my journey as an entrepreneur. So overall, I kept total expenses down to 25%, but remember, you'd also need to factor in your cost of goods sold. So total expenses were 31.71%. And then my profit margin was 68%. So a lot of this net income was taken as distributions as the owner back home. That was replacing, my income because I wasn't having my W-2 income anymore. So that's the direction that we were going. But it was 18 times the profit of the year before, and my expenses were 11 times the expenses the year before, and then my revenue was 15 times the year before. So, I just thought I found this interesting as I was going back and just learning and looking at my expenses. I thought maybe you might like it as well. So if this was helpful, please let me know in the comment section below if this was. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please do let me know, because, I want to give you guys stuff that you actually want to watch and listen to and what you can actually learn from.
So those were my expenses. I hope that was helpful to you. If you had any aha moments or things that you were like, oh, I should actually go and invest in that, or I should actually not spend money on this anymore, put those in the comment section. I would love to hear. You know what? This is a safe space to be somewhat vulnerable and just say like, hey, maybe I didn't do it right. What do? We learn from it and we change things. We learn from it and we change things. So you heard me go through some of these expenses that I was like, shouldn't have spent money on that. Shouldn't have spent money on that. But some of that was a learning process for me too. So totally understand. We are all in this boat and on this journey together. So if I can help you learn a little bit more along the way, I'm so happy that I could do that. All right. So thanks so much for watching, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.